The man did not offer her kindness first. He offered her a bargain. It came out of his mouth calm and plain, like he was naming the price of cattle instead of changing the course of 2 lives. "I need a mother for my sons," he said, "and you need shelter." Lydia Brooks stood there in his kitchen, fingers stiff from cold, heart pounding so loud she was sure he could hear it. The fires snapped behind him. The house smelled of coffee and wood smoke. Outside, the storm screamed like it meant to claim her by nightfall. And before she could stop herself, one terrible question rose in her chest. What kind of woman agrees to a marriage like that? 3 hours earlier, Lydia had been certain she would die before morning. The wind had chased her across the prairie, tearing at her coat and driving needles of ice into her face. Snow fell sideways, thick and fast, swallowing the road behind her until even her footprints vanished. She had nowhere to go, no home, no job, no family waiting east or west. Only the ranch gates ahead. Everyone in Cedar Ridge knew the Blackwood Ranch, biggest spread for miles, cattle enough to blot the hills in summer, a house that stood solid against storms that crushed lesser homes flat. Lydia hadn't planned to walk toward it. Her feet simply carried her there when the cold grew too sharp to think. She was 26 years old, trained as a schoolteacher, and ruined by circumstances she hadn't caused. The school board had let her go that same week. Budget cuts, winter months not worth the expense. The room she rented above the bakery vanished with the job. And the man who once promised her marriage had decided a woman without income was no longer suitable. By the time she reached the iron gates, her fingers were numb inside her gloves. Her carpet bag held everything she owned. 3 silver coins rested in her pocket, too little to buy passage anywhere that mattered. The gate stood open. That should have warned her. The house rose out of the snow like a promise she did not deserve. Tall, solid, warm light glowing behind thick glass. Smoke curled from the chimney, slow and steady, proof of life inside. She was still standing there, frozen in place, when the front door opened. The man who stepped out looked carved from the same timber as the house. Broad shoulders, dark hair dusted with snow, a face set into lines that spoke of work and restraint, not softness. He did not wear a coat. The storm did not seem to touch him. "You're going to freeze standing there," he called. His voice was deep, unhurried, certain. Lydia swallowed. Pride rose in her throat, useless and painful. "I didn't mean to intrude," she said. The storm came on sudden. He studied her without staring, eyes sharp and pale as winter sky, took in the thin coat, the worn shoes. The bag clutched like a lifeline. "You're the teacher," he said. "Not a question." "Yes." "They closed the school." She nodded. Another pause. Wind howled between them. Snow piled at their feet. "You can't make it back to town," he said. "Not tonight." "I know." "Then come inside." It wasn't charity. It wasn't pity. It was a statement of fact, delivered like any other. Lydia followed him up the drive, because freezing to death was worse than accepting help from a stranger with eyes that missed nothing. The warmth inside the house hit her like mercy. Firelight danced across clean wooden floors. The place was orderly but bare. No flowers, no soft touches. A house run for function, not comfort. "Boys," the man called, "we've got company." 2 children appeared from the hallway, one older, solemn and watchful. The other smaller, curious and open-faced. "This is Miss Brooks," he told them. "She's waiting out the storm." The younger boy stepped closer. "Are you really a teacher?" "I was," Lydia said, crouching despite the ache in her knees. "Do you like learning?" The boy nodded hard. The older one said nothing. His eyes never left her face. Coffee steamed in a tin cup moments later, warming her hands enough that the shaking eased. Snow thickened against the windows. The storm showed no sign of letting go. "That was a bad one," the man said. "Roads will be buried by morning." She stared into her cup, knowing what that meant. A night, maybe more. She should feel shame. She felt relief instead. "What will you do now?" he asked. The question landed heavy. "I'll look for another position," she said. "Somewhere." He waited. "I don't know where," she admitted. Silence filled the kitchen, broken only by the pop of firewood and the distant sound of a child laughing. Lydia felt something tighten in her chest. Warmth like that should not be so rare. The man set his cup down carefully. "My name's Aaron Cole," he said, "and I won't waste your time." She looked up. "I need help running this house," he continued. "My sons need structure, a woman's hand. Someone steady." Lydia's breath caught. "You," he said, meeting her eyes, "need a place to stay, food, protection, a name that keeps winter from killing you." Her heart began to race. "I'm not offering romance," Aaron said. "This would be an arrangement, a marriage in name. Separate rooms, separate expectations, but security." The words fell between them like stones. Lydia thought of the storm outside, of the coins in her pocket, of the tree she had nearly frozen beneath, of the children in the next room growing up without gentleness. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you're educated," he said. "Because you're alone. And because you're honest enough to know desperation when you see it." The truth of it burned. "I need time," she whispered. "You've got the night," Aaron said, glancing toward the windows now lost behind white. "The storm will decide the rest." Later, alone in the small bedroom set aside for her, Lydia sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the wind tear at the walls. The house did not shake. It held. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the weight of the choice waiting for her when morning came. Shelter or pride. And for the first time in her life, she knew she could not afford both. Morning arrived without ceremony. No sun broke through the windows. No birds announced the day. Only a vast, heavy silence pressed against the house, the kind that followed a storm strong enough to change the land itself. Lydia woke slowly, the unfamiliar bed stiff beneath her back. For one brief moment, she did not remember where she was. Then the smell of coffee drifted under the door, and memory returned all at once. The proposal, the children, the bargain that waited for her answer. She sat up and swung her feet to the floor. Cold crept up through the boards, but it was a gentler cold than the one she had fled. She dressed in her best dress, navy wool rubbed thin at the elbows, and pinned her hair back with careful fingers. There would be no illusion here. If she said yes, it would be with her eyes open. When she stepped into the kitchen, Aaron Cole stood at the stove, back to her, pouring coffee. He did not turn right away. "Storm buried everything," he said. 2 feet at least. She moved beside him to the window. The world beyond it had been erased, fences half swallowed, road vanished. The ranch cut off from everything else. "We're snowed in," she said. "For a few days," he replied. "Maybe longer." He handed her a cup. Their fingers brushed. It felt louder than it should have. They stood there, steam rising between them. "I've been thinking about what you said," Lydia began. "So have I." Quote. She took a breath. "I need to understand what you expect of me." Aaron leaned back against the counter, folding his arms. "The boys need consistency. Meals at regular times. Clean clothes. Someone who notices when they're struggling instead of waiting for trouble." "And you?" "I need someone I can depend on," he said. "When I'm out checking cattle, when storms hit, when things go wrong." The honesty in his voice unsettled her more than flattery ever could. "And in return," she asked, "what would I receive?" "Shelter, my name, protection." He paused. "Respect. No promises of affection, no soft words. Just terms laid bare." "Separate rooms," she said. "Yes." "And if it fails?" Aaron's jaw tightened. "Then we face that when it comes. I don't make agreements planning for them to break." It was not reassurance, but it was truth. Small feet padded down the stairs, breaking the tension. The younger boy appeared first, hair wild, eyes bright. "Good morning," he said cheerfully. "Papa said you might teach us letters today." Quote. The older one lingered behind him, watching Lydia closely. "Only if your father agrees," Lydia said. Aaron glanced at his sons. Something passed across his face, too quick to name. "After breakfast." The boys whooped and disappeared toward the table. Lydia watched them. something stirring in her chest she did not trust. Later, as she showed the younger boy how to form his letters with charcoal on scrap paper, she felt it clearly. Purpose, familiar, and steady. Teaching was something she knew, something she could do well. The older boy hovered nearby, pretending not to care. Lydia noticed anyway. "You already know some of these," she said gently. He shrugged. "Some." "That's more than some men," she replied. A corner of his mouth twitched before he caught himself. When Aaron returned from checking the barn, he stopped in the doorway, watching them. Lydia sensed him there, but did not look up. "She's good," the younger boy announced proudly. "She says letters open doors." Aaron's gaze stayed on Lydia. "They do." The rest of the day passed in quiet rhythm. Snow shoveled, bread baked, lessons given, supper eaten together like something almost normal. When evening fell, Aaron showed Lydia the room upstairs that would be hers if she stayed. It was larger than the one below. A woman's room, once loved and left untouched. "This belonged to my wife," he said. "She died giving birth to the youngest." "I don't want to take what was hers," Lydia said softly. "It's a room," he replied. "It was meant to be lived in." That night, Lydia lay awake long after the house went quiet. The wind had settled, but the decision roared in her mind. Marriage without love, safety bought with duty, a life exchanged for survival. Yet when she closed her eyes, she did not see chains. She saw a table with 4 chairs, warmth, work, children who needed her. Morning came again, pale and cold. Aaron waited for her answer in the kitchen, hands wrapped around his cup. "I will not be a replacement," Lydia said before fear could stop her. "For your wife, for their mother." "I wouldn't ask you to be," he said. "I would want to teach," she continued. "Your boys, others if they come." Quote, "That's fine. And if I say yes," she whispered, "it's because I choose to help, not because I have no other option." Aaron studied her, then nodded once. "That's the only answer worth hearing." She took a breath so deep it hurt. "Then yes," Lydia said, "I'll marry you." The words did not feel like surrender. They felt like stepping onto solid ground after weeks of sinking. The wedding happened 3 days later, when the roads cleared just enough for a preacher to reach the ranch. There were no flowers, no music, only a handful of witnesses and 2 boys watching from the doorway. Aaron's kiss was brief, respectful, sealed like a contract. That night, Lydia lay in her new room, staring at the ceiling. She was a wife now, a mother in name, a stranger in a house full of echoes. Down the hall, a small knock sounded. "Are you really staying?" the older boy asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Lydia said, "I am." He considered that, then nodded. "Good." As he slipped back into the dark, Lydia closed her eyes. The storm had passed. Now came the harder weather. The town noticed the marriage before it understood it. They arrived at church the following Sunday, under a sky scrubbed pale by cold. The wagon wheels creaked over frozen ruts, the sound carrying farther than it should have. Lydia sat straight in the seat beside Aaron, gloved hands folded in her lap, aware of every glance turned their way. She wore her navy dress again. It was the best she had. It would have to stand against judgment. Aaron helped her down from the wagon without ceremony. His hand was firm, steady, not possessive. That mattered more than he knew. Conversations around the churchyard softened as they passed. Not stopped. Softened. Whispers slid across the winter air like snow against glass. Too soon. Poor Margaret. Smart girl, landing herself a ranch. Lydia kept her eyes forward. Samuel held her hand tightly, as if he sensed the danger in words he could not hear. Daniel walked on Aaron's other side, chin lifted in quiet defiance. Inside the church, they took the family pew. Lydia felt the weight of the empty space beside her, the space that had once belonged to another woman. She did not look at it. She focused on the hymns, on Samuel's small voice singing too loudly, on Daniel reading over the preacher's shoulder, lips moving silently with the words. After the service, the trial truly began. Mrs. Hollis approached first, smile stretched thin. "Mrs. Cole," she said, letting the title linger, "how are you finding married life?" "It's been busy," Lydia replied, "but good." "Well," Mrs. Hollis said lightly, "you certainly moved up in the world." Before Lydia could answer, another woman joined them, then another. Polite questions. Sharp undertones, each one measuring her worth against the ghost she could never match. "Margaret was so devoted," someone said. "She organized everything." "I'm sure you'll try," another added. Lydia nodded. She did not defend herself. She did not compete with a memory. Samuel tugged her hand. "Mama," he said loudly, "can we go see the horses after?" The word carried. Heads turned. "Mama." A silence followed, heavy and awkward. Daniel stepped closer to Lydia. "She reads to us," he said, "and she knows all the numbers." Aaron's voice cut in, calm and firm. "That's enough." The crowd shifted. The moment passed. They rode home in quiet. Snow creaked beneath the wheels. The ranch appeared in the distance like a refuge. That evening, as Lydia cleared dishes, Aaron spoke without looking at her. "They'll talk." "I know. You don't owe them anything." She paused, dish towel in hand. "Thank you." Later that week, she found Daniel sitting alone in a small, forgotten room at the end of the hall. Dust hung thick in the air. A portrait leaned against the wall, turned face down. "She made this," he said, holding up a worn wooden horse. "For me." Lydia sat beside him. "It's beautiful." "There was another baby," he said. "A girl. She didn't live." The weight of it settled between them. "I'm not here to replace her," Lydia said gently, "or your mother." Daniel studied her. "Then why are you here?" "Because you needed someone," she said. "And so did I." Quote. He thought about that for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay." That night, Lydia spoke to Aaron in his study. "They miss her," she said. "They need to talk about her." Aaron's face hardened. "The past doesn't help us survive." "Neither does silence," Lydia replied softly. He looked at her then. Really looked. Something cracked, just enough to let pain show through. "She sang to them," he said quietly. "Irish songs." "At night." "Then we should let them remember," Lydia said. Aaron said nothing more, but he did not forbid it. The first real test came 3 weeks later. Aaron noticed missing cattle. Not wandered. Taken. Wire cut clean. Tracks driven with purpose. "This isn't chance," he said that night. "Someone wants me weakened." 2 days later, Jake, one of his men, stumbled into the yard bleeding from a gunshot wound. Lydia did not panic. She boiled water, cleaned the wound, bound it tight. Aaron watched her work, something new in his eyes. "They shot him," Jake said through clenched teeth. "Didn't warn, just fired." The message was clear. That night, Aaron sat at the table long after the boys were asleep. "If they come again," he said, "you take the boys to the root cellar." "I won't hide if you're fighting," Lydia said. He looked at her sharply. "You're not a ranch hand." "I'm your wife," she said, "and those are my children now." Silence stretched. Then he nodded. "All right." The attack came 2 nights later. Gunfire shattered the dark. Shouts echoed across the yard. Lydia moved without thinking. She woke the boys, led them to the cellar, pressed them into hiding. When the front door splintered, she was already holding the shotgun. 2 men burst inside. "This is private property," Lydia said. "Leave." They laughed. She fired. The sound filled the house. 1 man fell. The other froze. Aaron appeared behind them moments later, gun raised. After it was over, after the men were bound, and the house fell silent again, Lydia finally shook. Aaron stood in front of her, eyes wide with something she had never seen before. "You could have run," he said. "So could you," she replied. He looked at her then as if seeing her clearly for the first time. "There are children," he said. "Yes," Lydia replied. "They are." In the days that followed, something changed. Aaron asked her opinion, listened to it, sought her out in the evenings. The boys laughed more. Daniel slept through the night. Samuel stopped clinging so tightly. One evening, as they stood together at the sink, Aaron spoke quietly. This was never supposed to be more than survival. Lydia nodded. I know. But it is, he said. She met his eyes. Yes, she said softly. It is. The days after the attack settled into a strange, watchful calm. Men rode the fence lines in pairs now, rifles leaned by every door. The ranch moved like a body braced for another blow. Lydia felt it in the way Aaron scanned the horizon longer than before, in the way his hand lingered on the boys' shoulders each morning before he went out. Nothing happened. And, somehow, that was worse. Lydia returned to routine because routine gave shape to fear. She taught lessons upstairs in the room Aaron cleared for her. Word spread quickly. 2 children became 4. 4 became 7. By the end of the month, 8 small desks filled the space with noise, chalk dust, and life. Daniel helped the younger ones with their letters. Samuel memorized poems with dramatic flair. Lydia watched them grow steadier, stronger, and felt pride settle deep in her bones. One evening, she found Aaron standing in the doorway, listening. You don't have to stay, she said quietly. I want to, he replied. They stood there, not touching. The distance between them felt charged now. Different. Later that night, Lydia woke to a knock at her door. It was Daniel. I had a bad dream, he said, trying to sound brave. She sat him on the bed and listened as he spoke of shadows and gunshots and losing everything again. You didn't lose us, she said. We're still here. He hesitated. You won't leave, will you? No, she said firmly, even if it gets hard. He studied her face like a man weighing truth. Then he nodded and leaned into her side, asleep before she finished smoothing his hair. The territorial marshal arrived a week later with 2 deputies. The rustlers talked quickly once iron bars waited at the end of the road. Names were named, intentions laid bare. Railroad men, land pressure, forced sales. They'll try again, the marshal warned Aaron, but quieter, smarter. When the lawmen left, Aaron found Lydia in the kitchen. I should have sent you away, he said, before all this. She set down the bread she was kneading. You offered shelter. I chose family. His eyes darkened. You could still choose safety. This is safety, she said, for me. That night, something finally broke open between them. They sat in the parlor, fire low, boys asleep upstairs. Aaron stared into the flames. I loved my first wife, he said suddenly, deeply. Lydia waited. She died believing I'd be all right, he continued, that I'd raise our son strong. I didn't think I'd ever feel anything again. She felt the truth of it land heavy. I'm not her, Lydia said softly. No, he said, you're not. He turned to her then, eyes raw and searching. But you're here, he said, and I care about you, more than I planned to, more than I thought I should. Her heart began to race. I don't want to disrespect her memory, she said. You don't, he replied. You honor it, by keeping this house alive. Silence stretched between them, full. Trembling, Aaron reached for her hand. She did not pull away. The kiss that followed was careful, questioning. Nothing like the formal one that had bound them by law. This one carried choice. When it ended, Lydia rested her forehead against his. We don't have to rush, she said. I know, he replied, but I don't want to pretend anymore. Neither did she. The change did not go unnoticed. Samuel announced one morning that Papa smiled more now. Daniel watched them with quiet approval, eyes sharp and knowing. Church felt different too. The whispers softened, the looks changed. People began speaking to Lydia not as an intruder but as a fixture. When a neighbor fell ill, Lydia went. When a baby was born, she taught the mother how to soothe it. When the preacher asked about a proper school, she agreed. She did not replace anyone, she became herself. Spring crept in slowly. Snow melted. Grass pushed through earth that had nearly killed her months before. One afternoon, Lydia found Aaron waiting on the porch, hat in hand. I've been thinking, he said. That phrase no longer frightened her. We never had a real wedding, he continued, not one we chose. Her breath caught. I'd like to, he said. If you would. She laughed then, breathless and surprised. Yes, she said, I would. The boys planned everything. Flowers from the meadow, music borrowed from town, tables built by ranch hands who grinned like conspirators. The day arrived bright and warm. This time, Lydia wore her navy dress because it was hers, because it told the truth of where she had come from. When Aaron took her hands, his voice did not shake. I choose you, he said. Not out of need, but because I love you. She answered without hesitation, I choose you too. The kiss that followed was not careful. It was sure. That night, as lanterns glowed and laughter filled the yard, Lydia stood watching her family dance and felt something settle at last. She had come seeking shelter. She had found home. The trouble did not end with spring. It only changed its shape. The railroad men did not come back with guns or threats. They came with papers and polite smiles, offers delivered through intermediaries, prices generous enough to tempt, but never generous enough to be fair. Aaron turned them all away. Each refusal tightened the air around the ranch. Lydia felt it in the way riders passed too close to the fence line, in the unfamiliar faces that appeared in town and lingered too long near the general store, in the way Daniel stopped wandering far from the house without asking first. One afternoon, Aaron came in late, dust thick on his coat. They're pressuring my neighbors now, he said quietly. Trying to box us in. Lydia poured him coffee and waited. If they succeed, he continued, we become isolated. Easier to force out. And if they don't, then they escalate. She did not flinch. Then we stand. He studied her. You understand what that means. I understand what leaving would mean too, she replied. The boys sensed the tension even when words were spared. Samuel grew quieter. Daniel watched the horizon with a seriousness that stole childhood from his face. One night, Lydia found Daniel awake, staring at the ceiling. Papa's worried, he said. Yes, she answered. Are we going to lose the ranch? She sat beside him. No one is taking our home. Even if it's hard? Especially then. The next blow came without warning. A fire. It started in the south pasture, deliberate and controlled. Grass burned fast and hungry, flames racing toward the barn before Aaron and his men could turn it back. They fought it through the night, shovels and sweat and blistered hands holding the line. Lydia worked beside them, hauling water, binding burns, refusing rest. By dawn, the fire lay dead and blackened. The barn still stood. The cattle lived. But the message was clear. Aaron stood in the ash-stained yard, face drawn tight. They're not done, he said. No, Lydia replied. They're desperate. That changed everything. Aaron rode into town the next morning and returned with papers of his own. Claims. Counterclaims. Evidence collected quietly over months. He sat at the table late into the night, Lydia beside him, reading, organizing, advising. You're good at this, he said once. I taught children to reason, she replied. Men aren't much different. He smiled at that, a real smile. The hearing was set for early summer. The whole town came. Railroad agents in clean coats, ranchers in worn boots, families whose futures hung in the balance. Lydia sat behind Aaron, hands folded, spine straight. Daniel and Samuel beside her, solemn and proud. Aaron spoke plainly, presented proof, named names. When the agents spoke, their words sounded hollow. The ruling came swift and decisive. Fraud, coercion, illegal seizure. The railroad men left town quieter than they arrived. Relief spread through the room like breath released. Outside, neighbors clapped Aaron on the shoulder. Some thanked Lydia quietly. Others looked at her with new respect. You didn't just survive, Mrs. Hollis said stiffly. You fought. Lydia nodded. So did everyone else. That night, the house felt lighter. Aaron poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed her one. To standing, he said. To choosing, she replied. He watched her over the rim of his glass. You never ran. I never wanted to, she said. The boys burst in moments later, breathless with excitement. We won, Samuel announced. Daniel nodded. We're staying. Yes, Lydia said, smiling. We are. Summer settled into the land like a blessing. Grass grew thick. Calves were born strong. Laughter returned to the ranch in easy bursts. The school upstairs expanded again. A proper chalkboard. New benches built by Aaron's men. Parents lingered at the door, listening. One evening, as Lydia closed the shutters, Aaron stopped behind her. I didn't think I could have this again, he said. A partner, not someone behind me, someone beside me. She turned. I didn't think I'd ever be chosen. He lifted her hand and pressed it to his chest. I choose you every day. Quote. The words settled deep. That night, when the house was quiet and the world beyond their windows calm, Lydia lay awake thinking of the woman she had been, cold, alone, walking toward iron gates with nothing but hope and fear to guide her. She would not recognize herself now, nor would she trade the path that had brought her here. Outside, the prairie breathed in the dark. Inside, the house held steady. They had been tested, they had endured, and together they had won. The quiet that followed victory felt almost unfamiliar. For weeks, Lydia waited for the next blow, another threat, another test. Trouble had a way of returning just when a person dared to believe it was finished. But summer stretched on without incident. Grass swayed tall and green across the pastures. The cattle grew fat and calm. The house filled with ordinary sounds. Footsteps on stairs. Laughter through open windows. The low murmur of lessons drifting from the upstairs schoolroom. Ordinary life returned. And with it came something even rarer. Peace. Lydia stood at the kitchen window one morning, watching Aaron teach Samuel how to saddle a horse. Daniel leaned against the fence nearby, pretending not to watch too closely while correcting them both when they did it wrong. The sight settled something deep inside her. This was not borrowed safety. This was home. The school grew steadily through the summer. Children arrived from neighboring ranches, riding ponies or piled into wagons. Lydia taught reading, numbers, history, and patience. She taught children who had never held a book how to believe they could learn. Parents noticed the change. So did the town. When autumn approached, Reverend Pike rode out one afternoon with a question. We'd like to make your school official, he said. Proper funding, supplies, recognition. Lydia felt her breath catch. Once, she had lost everything because a board decided she was unnecessary. Now they were asking. She looked to Aaron. He did not answer for her, he only nodded. Yes, Lydia said, I would like that. That evening, as she told the boys, Samuel danced around the kitchen. My mama's the real teacher, he announced proudly. Daniel smiled in his quiet way. I told them she was. Later, after the house had settled, Lydia and Aaron sat on the porch watching the sky deepen into dusk. You built something lasting, Aaron said. We did, she corrected. He smiled. Yes, we did. Autumn came gentle and gold. Then winter returned, slower this time, like a visitor instead of a threat. The first snow fell one evening while Lydia read by the fire. Aaron watched the flakes gather against the window. This was the night, he said softly, the storm that brought you here. She remembered it clearly, the cold, the fear, the iron gates looming ahead. I almost didn't walk through, she admitted. I'm glad you did. He reached for her hand. She leaned into his side, feeling the solid truth of him there. The boys grew taller, stronger, kinder. Daniel learned to laugh again without checking himself. Samuel learned that the world did not always leave. On the anniversary of their second wedding, the town gathered at the ranch without being asked. Tables appeared. Music followed. Children ran wild through the fields. This time, Lydia felt no fear standing among them. Mrs. Hollis approached with a basket of bread. You did well, she said quietly. We were wrong about you. Lydia accepted the bread. People often are. As the sun dipped low, Aaron drew her aside. I never thanked you properly, he said. For what? For choosing us, he replied. for staying when it would have been easier to walk away. She met his eyes. You gave me shelter. I gave you my work. Somewhere along the way, we gave each other love. He kissed her then, slow and sure, not caring who saw. That night, after the guests had gone and the boys slept heavy with exhaustion, Lydia stood once more at the window. Snow drifted softly across the prairie, but this time she did not feel fear. She felt gratitude. She had arrived at this place broken and desperate, a woman with no future and nowhere to turn. She had found more than survival. She had found purpose, partnership, love that grew not from grand promises, but from shared hardship and daily choice. The house stood firm against the wind, warm, alive, and Lydia knew with a certainty that filled her chest that no storm could ever take this life from her now, because this time she belonged.